So when I think about the three greatest obstacles that we have in performance and in life, the three ones that I've seen the most is overanalyzing, just way too many thoughts from way too many concerns, which I call the monkey mind. And then there's all the negative thoughts and judgmental thoughts. When I say judgmental, I mean laying down a negative verdict, like you're the judge about yourself, about someone else, or a circumstance. And that's what I'm calling the critic. And then there's self-consciousness, being concerned about what will people think about me if I screw this up, if I fail. And that's what I'm calling that voice in your head that lies to you. That's what I call the trickster.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today with my guest, Jim Murphy. Jim is a performance coach to some of the best athletes and leaders in the world. He is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of the book, Inner Excellence, Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and the Best Possible Life. Jim began his career as a professional baseball player in the Chicago Cubs organization, and after experiencing vision issues that ended his playing career, Jim coached with the Texas Rangers as well as the South African Olympic baseball team. The majority of Jim's clients have the best year of their careers in the first year working with him, and in addition to coaching professional athletes and executives, Jim leads Inner Excellence offsite retreats around the globe. He is the president of the Inner Excellence Freedom Project, whose mission is to build communities to alleviate spiritual and physical poverty around the world. I'm looking forward to talking all things inner performance in today's show. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brian.
Jim, I want to jump back in the DeLorean a little bit in the timeline here, because it's a very interesting story for how you've been able to hit people on so many different levels. After your baseball dream died, you spent 5 years alone in the Sonoran Desert, $90,000 in debt, wrestling with the fundamental question about human performance. Then the NFL wide receiver, AJ Brown, was caught reading your book in a playoff game and everything changed. Talk to us a little bit about how everything has changed over the past, several months, several years. And then I want to start and pivot into the striver's dilemma, because I think that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to connect with on today's podcast.
Yeah, thank you. My life has changed a lot since January 12th. So that was the day when AJ Brown was first shown on TV watching or reading the book during the game. I had no idea that he was reading the book during the games. I found out like everybody else. About a month earlier, I saw a photo of him in uniform with the book in his hand, but I had no context. And I just thought, oh, that's cool. And I forgot about it. And then that night, it was actually Sunday night, January 12th, I'm walking around downtown Dallas, and it was a somber time for me. Business was slow. Life was kind of lonely. Mom was dying. And it was like the calm before the storm. And then I look at my phone. I'm in this empty hotel room by myself, and I'm watching a different football game. And I look at my phone, and I see all these texts. And I actually thought my mom probably went to heaven. And then someone said, and they said, you got to watch the Eagles-Packers game. So I watched it, and I was like, wow, this is probably going to be significant. Kind of shocked. And then it was just this whirlwind that hasn't stopped since January.
That's incredible. And it just shows in terms of opportunities presenting themselves at different seasons of life, depending on, where you are spiritually, emotionally, etc. And I will double back into the spirituality side later, because I think that's something that's very passionate to both of us. But I want to talk about the striver's dilemma first. I heard you speaking about this countless times, but particularly in the episode with Rich Roll when you were on his show. Talk to us a little bit about the striver's dilemma, because a lot of people will have experienced this, felt this, but won't necessarily have labeled it or named it.
One of the things that I talked about, and this may be what you're referring to, is when you're really talented, whether you're smart, you got some sort of talent or good looking or whatever, you're going to set some high goals. You're going to try and achieve a lot, because when you get love from the world, that's our greatest need. Our greatest need as humans is for love and acceptance, to connect with others, because we're created for relationship. And so when we get that through anything, through how we look, through what we achieve, through what we have, we feel a sense of, okay, I'm somebody, I'm okay, people love me. And so when you have talent, then you're going to get more of that so-called love, the cheers from the world. And then it's this cycle that's really hard to get out of, where your identity gets revolved around what you have, what you look like, what you've achieved. But the problem is there's just way too much out of your control. And so when you're really talented, there's this dangerous cycle that you can get sucked into, this vortex where I call it the competitor's trap. You set a goal, you put in the effort, you work at it, and then you get a result. And then you process the result in your mind, and you're going to get a feeling. And then after you get that feeling, that's going to impact your beliefs, and beliefs are really what's running our lives. And then you're going to respond with another goal. So say, for example, you set a goal, you work hard at it, and you achieve it. You're going to get a feeling. The feeling is going to be some temporary positive feeling. Oh, okay, that's great. It's going to impact your belief. Okay, maybe I can achieve my goals and dreams. And then you're going to respond, okay, let's set another goal. And so you set a higher goal. You work at it, and then you don't get what you want. So now you're going to process that in your mind, and it's going to be a negative feeling. And then you're like, oh, maybe I can't achieve my goals and dreams. And so, well, I know what I got to do. I got to work harder, and I got to set another goal and go at it again. And it's this vortex that sucks you in. It's just like, I am what I achieve. I am what I have. Because when you're really talented, then you can achieve and have a lot. And so that's why the people that are the most talented are some of the ones that have the hardest time with this problem.
With the vortex, it's so interesting, and I think you would have experienced this with directly working with individuals, but also people you've come across in terms of the field. And I've been the same with this podcast, gold medal Olympians, professional athletes, etc. And some of them are driven by this beautiful love for the game, this love for performance, this love for showing up in a certain way. But others are driven and fueled by anxiety. They're fueled by an external validation that needs to be filled. Some have awareness around it and choose to channel it. Some don't have awareness around it, and it can be an unfortunate thing that potentially gets highlighted when you're having a conversation when somebody puts a question in a specific way. For those that are listening, is there a sweet spot for that vortex? Meaning that we want to be able to show up and perform in marathons, in sport, in CrossFit, in bodybuilding, insert sport here, lots of different modalities that people enjoy that are listening to this podcast. But a lot of us want to perform at a very high level, but we don't want it to come at the cost of that external validation, like you said, where we're craving this pat on the back because our identity is wrapped in it. Is there a sweet spot to avoid being sucked into the vortex, but still being able to perform at a high level?
So, Brian, now we're getting into the 5 years of full-time writing and research in the desert. Like, what did I learn there? And what I learned is there's several things. One was initially that I realized that I don't want to spend my life doing something that's not meaningful. And by that, I mean, what if I help someone become world number one and it does not make the world a better place? It just makes them more egotistical. They buy more possessions and they're not a nice person. That would not be satisfying for me. And so I realized that to have the most peace and confidence under the most pressure for anything, a business person, an athlete, a musician, whatever you are, it's a state of the heart. And when I say heart, I mean your spirit and your will. And so in the book that I just wrote, The Best Possible Life, How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What, it's getting republished in the spring. I asked this question that I talked to Rich about, and it was actually quite misinterpreted, I think, on Instagram. And the question was, what would you rather have? And this is a thought experiment, and I think people didn't understand that part. A thought experiment, it's like a hypothetical, this world that we're creating. And in this world, you can have a $10 million home on the water, all paid off and have the normal concerns of that person, or live in an apartment, paycheck to paycheck, the rest of your life, no savings, but be guaranteed a life with amazing experiences, deep enriching relationships. You're learning and growing, filled with love, peace, joy every single day of your life. Which one would you rather have? And a lot of people kind of didn't understand that it's just to help you think deeply about your life, what you want. I'm not saying you can't be very successful and have peace and joy. I'm a performance coach that helps people do that and learn how to be successful and have a deep inner life. What I'm saying is that people come to me and they want something superficial. They're not thinking deep enough. They just, if your highest goal is to be a CEO or be a millionaire or billionaire, whatever you want to be, have billions of followers, it's just way too low a goal for inner excellence. Because you may get that, it may not even be meaningful, you may not even be happy. I mean, look at Michael Phelps, 23 Olympic gold medals, and he had all of that anxiety and fear, and it didn't give him a fulfilling life. And so people come to me and they want these surface level things to be world number one, which is great. That's what I'm paid for. And, people have gotten. But what I teach them is how to have inner peace and inner strength, which is directly connected to mental toughness, beauty, and gratitude. And so it's all under the umbrella of what is it that you really want? Like we're talking about, well, what's the sweet spot for aspiration and contentment, for example? What's that sweet spot? The sweet spot is to say, look, why am I doing this? Why am I a CrossFitter? Or why am I an entrepreneur? Or what is it that I really want? Do I just want a lot of money so I can put it in a bathtub and roll around in it? Of course not. What I really want is a meaningful, fulfilling life with amazing experiences and deep, enriching relationships where I'm learning and growing and making a difference in the world. This is what most people want, some version of that. And that's what Inner Excellence is about. How do we pursue that? How do we pursue a life where you feel fully alive? And that's what I want people to understand and learn. And that's really understanding the human heart.
I love that, and it gives a perfect segue into the heart being the true source of mental toughness, which I think is a very important thing for people to internalize. But what I hear you saying for those listening, I think it echoes my belief system of that process versus outcome, that yes, have the outcome in mind. If it's a surface level goal, by all means, be world number one, be world class, whatever the goal is, but it's what's fueling that. Is it anxiety and a constant need for validation from others and people telling you that you're good enough that's fueling that? Or is it coming from a place of peace and love and gratitude? Because both will fuel the journey, just in two very different ways. It reminds me of that quote, I think it's attributed to Buddha, that how do you expect to be happy at a destination if you're not happy on the journey? It's what's the journey, what's the process, what's the fuel for the inner excellence, and then you're hitting the goal nearly as a byproduct of the way that you're living. With that in mind, talk to us a little bit about why the heart is the true source of mental toughness.
Yeah, so sports psychology is about training the mind, and Inner Excellence is largely about that. There's so much in that, but we use the mind to train the heart. In other words, we have thoughts here, and then we have, three brains. We have a brain here, and a brain in our stomach. And
so head, heart, and stomach for people that are listening audio. Yeah.
Right. And the most important part is when I say your heart, I mean your spirit, your will, the deepest part of you. So if I'm coaching you and I want to help you live the best possible life, it's helpful for me to give you tools and how to visualize and how to, what do I do in this moment when I'm really nervous? What do I do right now? I'll give you some sort of a tool, breathing exercise or visualization exercise. Those are all helpful, but that's only frosting on the cake. We've got to get much deeper. We've got to get to the subconscious neural level if we really want to make a difference in someone's life. We got to understand what's their greatest fears and what's their greatest dreams. And when you understand human nature, now you're going to understand that everyone is so similar. Like I shared earlier, like who doesn't want a life where they have amazing experiences and they feel fully alive and they have deep, enriching relationships, learning and growing, making a difference. Everyone wants some version of that. And already knowing that, we can really help them. The problem is that people get diverted. They get distracted by lower loves, lesser loves, or lower level loves. In other words, say you have a roommate who's always eating chocolate chip cookies and you want to be the top CrossFitter in your neighborhood. Well, it can be hard because if you love chocolate chip cookies like I do. And so it's hard for me to say that's a lower level love, but anything that's because they're so tasty.
I was going to say it's a pretty high level love. They're pretty good.
Yeah. But anything that is just there for instant gratification, that is not helping you in the long term, is a lower level love. And even if your goal is to be world number one, I've worked with multiple world number ones. Even if that's your goal, it's just too low because we don't even know if it's going to make you happy, let alone give you a meaningful, fulfilling life, which is what you really want.
You mentioned there about dreams and fears, and it kind of reminds me of that pain pleasure principle that we're trying to avoid pain, move towards pleasure in terms of evolutionary or biology 101. But when it comes to the mindset, and I'm not going to say sports psychology because inner excellence is very different from sports psychology. But when it comes to dreams and fears, and this might be different from general population, executive CEOs, all the way up to professional athletes, but do you find that people need to have an anchor in both? And when I say that, I've achieved some relatively high level things in the worlds of what I was competing in bodybuilding, professional fitness modeling, and then went into ultra marathons and did marathon des Sables and ran through the Arctic and some very, very extreme events. And I was running off both fuels. Fear of what will happen if I say I'm going to do something and I don't, and I want to be a better father, a better son, a better person, and move through the world in a more peaceful and calm way. That was the fear of who I'd potentially become if I didn't do this, mixed with the dream of I want to really see if I can push my body to do this. I really want to see, is this physically capable, or is my body physically capable of running a 100-mile ultramarathon in one go, or running multiple days through the Arctic or through the Sahara. So I was working off both. Do you find that there's or I might be a focus group of one, that people have to be able to tap into both the dream of what they aspire to and then the fear underneath? Or is it a case of when they level up, the fears are no longer driving them? It's coming from a place of love, and it's just that I still need one step on my evolution for that. Or what's something that you see most often, Jim?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. So the best possible life, I define the best possible life as a life filled with deep contentment, joy, and confidence, independent of circumstances. A life filled with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. Amazing experiences where you feel fully alive. That life has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. So I'll say that again. The best possible life has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. Now, I wish it was one foot in joy, one foot in joy. Let's just go for pleasure all the time. And well, I define joy as a deep sense of well-being, freedom, and gratitude, independent of circumstance, an inner buoyancy and delight that comes from love. Happiness is a positive temporary feeling based on what's happening. Good circumstances, you feel good. Bad circumstances, you're not happy. You're not getting what you want, then you're not going to be happy. And so joy is this much deeper sense that's of feeling that comes with this freedom, this gratitude, this energy that holds you up no matter what's going on the outside. And that life, to have that sense of joy, that best possible life, is not available without suffering. What I mean by that is, okay, you want to be that best possible life? Well, part of that means you got to be physically fit. Okay, and so like you don't have to be like Brian, but to have a great, you need to train, right? The best that you can for each individual. And so there's no way to build muscle without breaking it down, right? We have to have that sacrifice, and that's how the world is created. It's not something that I'm saying that you should do or anyone should do. I'm just saying, here's what I've noticed, is that the best possible life has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. And the emotional part, for example, there's a lot of suffering going on in the world today. If I were to just ignore it and just say, look, I'm going to build my life and see how much happiness that I can have in my own life, then I'm really going to need to build some walls, because what if someone breaks into my house? So I got to kind of build this fortress so no one can get in. And I'm really going to build walls that imprison me, because we're created for relationship and compassion. And compassion literally means to suffer with. And so if we don't suffer with others, if we don't connect deeply with others when they're hurting, then we're going to lose out, because we're going to have times when we're really hurting, and we need to it's going to happen one way or the other. You're going to suffer one way or the other. But if you suffer where you're pushing yourself to learn and grow and have compassion with others, then that suffering is going to turn into joy.
I love that. One foot in joy and one foot in suffering. And something that I feel gets misquoted or misunderstood in my circles, and maybe it's the same with you, Jim, is we're not saying suffering for suffering's sake. That's masochistic. But suffering for something that brings you purpose and peace is passion. And it reminds me a little bit of, I've had Navy SEALs and Army people on the podcast, and they'll talk about that band of brothers when you're going to war together, that there's this glue that keeps people together, and sometimes suffering with others does that. I brought a group of my followers up Mount Kilimanjaro in November, just gone, the highest freestanding mountain in the world, and that summit night where it's difficult, it's really thin air in terms of the altitude, it's cold, you're freezing, it's nighttime, but there's this solidarity between everybody because you're suffering together, and it's something that just gets highlighted the more time that passes or that I pass on this planet. So I think for people to take it away, that you're not just choosing suffering for suffering's sake, you're choosing the suffering that has meaning for you, that has purpose for you. I want to double back, and then I'm going to talk about focus and confidence a little bit, because I know you've got the three enemies, the critic, monkey mind, and trickster, and I think this is actually a very practical thing to talk about for people, because when we're looking for that joy, when we're looking to find that purpose, that passion, that deeper why, sometimes we actually need to just override the part of our brain, the monkey mind, that's actually not supporting us. But before we do, I want to jump back a little bit, because you had a mindset that held you back as a pro baseball player. I know you talk about this in the book, you talk about this online and on podcasts. And I think of my version of that was always, my language was, that's something other people do. When I was working as a teacher and I wanted to start a business, my self-limiting belief was, that's something other people do. When I wanted to do my first bodybuilding show, I was like, I'm not big enough. That's something other people do. When I wanted to run my first marathon, I'm like, I'm 5'8", I'm built like a little hobbit. I'm not going to be able to run a marathon. I'm too big. That's something other people do. So I had this limiting narrative and story that just replayed, that I still have to catch in 2025 and beyond, because it's default programming. Talk to us a little bit about what you see mirroring back from your experience as a pro baseball player that keeps a lot of high performers stuck today.
Well, lack of freedom is so common. Lack of freedom, and it's high performers and all of us. With social media, there's 24/7 comparison now. Because as you understand, as I shared earlier, that our greatest need is for relationship, for love, unconditional love. When we fail, there's that fear that we're going to lose that love. And so the lack of freedom because of the fear of failing is probably the most common thing that I see with pro athletes and with everyone. And the solution is really to think deeply about, how do I want to live? How do I want to feel? Who do I want to become? And what do I value most in my life? So you can simplify your life and narrow it down to what you can control and what's most important to you, and developing that person. And so Inner Excellence has three kind of pillars. There's belief, freedom, and focus. These are the kind of everything that we do with Inner Excellence is in those three areas. And belief is this kind of the leader of the three. It's really, your life really unfolds in general according to your beliefs and beliefs are feelings. And so what happens to most people is they have these scary feelings and then they back off. Which I've done many, many times. It's just human nature. You get these feelings like, oh, I hate this feeling. And so I want to get out of that feeling. And so what happens is when we come to the edge of our feelings, we're also coming to the edge of our beliefs. Inner Excellence is about expanding what you believe is possible. And so we need to be willing to let go of who you've been so you can become someone you've never been before. And that's scary, because if I completely let go of my past, then who am I? And that's a very scary feeling. And so there's some questions that you can ask yourself every day, especially when you have some nerves going into the day. Ask yourself, am I willing to face my fears? Am I willing to fail? Am I willing to look foolish in order to master my ego? And am I willing to face any feeling? That's because most people are not willing to face any feeling. Like there's some feelings, like if I get into a certain context, then I start to get really, really uncomfortable and I could get this panicky feeling. That's one feeling that I never would want to have. Well, if you're not willing to face that feeling, now that feeling has power over you, and that's the edge of your belief. And that's going to be where your sticking point. But if you can come to that feeling, you can look for it and embrace it and say, the most important thing is not the result of what I do in this moment, but am I willing to, and can I stay with this feeling even if it never goes away? Because beliefs are feelings. And now when you're able to sit in that feeling and not run from it, now you can expand what you believe is possible. And then anything is possible.
I had a podcast with a cognitive neuroscientist that just resurfaced or jumped into the front of my mind where, and I've used this tip regularly with people for fear management, and that's the jump between anxiety and excitement is a much shorter leap than going from anxiety to calm, because that's quite a completely different feeling, whereas anxiety and excitement are very similar. So sometimes it's these little tips and tricks that you have, whether it's the breathing techniques, the way you're speaking to yourself, but ultimately understanding, like you said, that your belief is the foundation. When you're coming up to the edge of that belief, or circle of competence in other language, in terms of, I don't know if I'm able to do this, sometimes you're going to be able to power through depending on capacity, and other times you'd have to step back and reevaluate. One of the things I think that can help with the focus and the confidence is understanding that critic, that monkey mind, that trickster. Talk to us a little bit about the three enemies of focus and confidence, because there'll be people listening here who, for whatever reason, want to do X, Y, or Z, start a business. I know we're going to have a conversation on the circle for my group business members as well, so this will be very, very valuable for them. But for those that are listening now, who want to set up a business, who want to join a race or fitness event that they're just too scared to, there's a limiting belief holding them back, all the way down from personal and romantic relationships up to career and fitness. Talk to us a little bit about the three enemies of focus and confidence, because I think they will help break through and arm people with tools to navigate this.
Sure. So when I think about the three greatest obstacles that we have in performance and in life, the three ones that I've seen the most is overanalyzing, just way too many thoughts from way too many concerns, which I call the monkey mind. And then there's all the negative thoughts and judgmental thoughts. When I say judgmental, I mean laying down a negative verdict, like you're the judge about yourself, about someone else, or a circumstance. And that's what I'm calling the critic. And then there's self-consciousness, being concerned about what will people think about me if I screw this up, if I fail. And that's what I'm calling that voice in your head that lies to you. That's what I call the trickster. That's a term that came from John Kehoe's book, Mind Power into the 21st Century. John's a great friend of mine. It's a really, really helpful book that I recommend to my clients. Those three things, that overanalysis, a mind with way too many thoughts, because that's what anxiety is, right? I don't know if I just said that, but too many thoughts and too many concerns, the judgmental, negative thinking, and then the mind that's always comparing. So I define the ego as a part of your mind that's always threatened, always comparing, never satisfied. And so those three big challenges all come from self-centeredness. And this is probably the biggest countercultural concept in inner excellence that you're not going to hear other places. If you want to be world number one, if you want to be the best musician, the best entrepreneur in the world, self-centeredness is the biggest challenge you face, because it leads to fear. Well, think of it this way. When you were afraid last time about some performance, were you afraid for your opponent or your neighbor or for yourself? It's for yourself, right? You're afraid, what will happen to me after I give this talk? So it's self-centered and future-oriented. After I do this performance, what will they think? How will I be evaluated? And so when you're at your very best, it doesn't matter if you're a musician or a business person or an athlete, there's no thoughts of self. It's completely selfless. Selfless is fearless. And so that's what inner excellence is. It's an in-depth system on how to get fully present in your life, fully engaged, heart, mind, and body, unattached to your goals and dreams. On top of that, you don't even know if say your goal is to be world number one in golf, like Scotty Scheffler. You don't even know if that's good for you. And so if you don't even know that your biggest goal is good for you, then would it be wise to be attached to a single story for your life, and I have to have that? I mean, that's how I've lived most of my life.
I'm nodding here going, oh, Jesus, I've done that. We all have, I think, in some shape or form. Sorry, I don't mean to cut across, but that was speaking to me in real time.
Yeah, and so that's the biggest challenge. So the way that I see that it works is that as humans, we have to think about ourselves. That's important, just for safety. You've got to feed yourself and clothe yourself and look both ways across the street. So we need to think about ourselves. But when we think about ourselves, our subconscious mind, which has two major roles, is to protect us and to create the circumstances and results that line up with our beliefs. And so constantly thinking about ourselves, our subconscious is like, whoa, look, you made that mistake. You got to be careful. That was scary last time, or last time you did this, you got hurt, and so it's always like trying to protect you with these fears. And so that's why we want to learn that when you're walking in love, not fear, then you can be fearless, then you can do anything. It's the limiting beliefs come from, who am I to be great? Well, it's that self-referential thing again. And so if we can get out of the sense of concern for self, if there's no concern for self, then anything's possible.
For someone looking to move out of that fear and walk from a place of love in their career, in their fitness goals, in just, I think, life in general, it's a very higher vibrational frequency to be moving through the world in. What would be a 0 to 1 process for that? For someone that's like, okay, I've been clearly running off gasoline and I want to run off electric. I've been running off fear. I've been running off negative thoughts. I've been running off, all these highlighted and illuminated unsupportive thought processes that you've mentioned, Jim, and I want to move into a place of walking through the world from a place of love, gratitude, peace. What would be a 0 to 1 protocol for that?
What most people do is they just look at their results and circumstances, and they're just like, okay, how can I make them better? I know I want to make more money. I want to have a bigger house, a nicer car, whatever it is that they want. And I think, well, one, that's a mistake. We want to, with Inner Excellence, we look, if anything is possible, what would I do? And we start we want to connect with that vision, that dream, and not limit ourselves by our past. Because when you look at your circumstances, you're looking at your past. And so we have 4 daily goals with Inner Excellence. And one is give the best of what I have today, each day. I'm going to give 100% of whatever I have, understanding that some days I'm only going to have 30, 40, 50% of my best. So we're going to give 100% of that. And 2 is to be present, because there's no fear in the present moment. 3 is to be grateful, because gratitude is directly linked to inner peace and inner strength. And then 4 is to focus on your routines and only what you can control. So we have those 4 daily goals under the overarching goal of learn and grow every day. And then there's a principle of Inner Excellence, and it goes like this. Principle number 1, there's 3 principles of Inner Excellence, and number 1 is, everything is here to teach me and help me. It's all working for my good. So if you're a listener and you're wondering, where do I start with Inner Excellence besides getting the book? Well, I would get the book and go to the audio book and start with a Q&A at the back, because I started the Q&A, I was coaching somebody, and so you can hear me coaching that person, Tiffany, the audio engineer. And so then we have these 4 daily goals, but realize I want to just learn and grow every day and not be attached to what I want and can't control, because you don't even know if that's the best path for you. And I also want to share with you, you mentioned earlier the idea about, it was a great idea about intensity and anxiety. Excitement and anxiety is a smaller leap than anxiety and calm, or fear and calm. And so here's what I do with my clients. In fact, I'll tell you a story that happened with a professional athlete that went on to become world number 1. It was Saturday night. She's leading a major, tied for the lead, and nervous. And so one of the things that I shared was, imagine you've performed 100 times when you've been really nervous. And 95, you played amazing, and 5, you didn't. What's your subconscious going to do? It's going to give the 95 a pass. Does your subconscious need to protect you from good feelings? No. It only wants to protect you from physical danger and emotional danger. And so the 5 that you didn't perform well, your subconscious wants to lock those in to protect you because you had negative feelings. The interesting thing is, if you had no negative feelings, your subconscious would give it a pass as well. It'd be like, oh, it didn't matter. It's no big deal. And that's why one person loses their job, they're suicidal. Another person's like, oh, okay, well, let's get a better job. It's because the subconscious had different experiences, different beliefs, different lens for seeing the world for the 2 people. And so that's where we want to expand what we believe is possible and continually train our heart and our subconscious working together. And so another thing that's really important about those 100 performances, the 95 and the 5, I told her, is that the feeling is going to be exactly the same. When you performed amazing, you were nervous, 95 times you performed amazing, you were nervous and it felt a certain way. 5 times you were nervous and didn't perform amazing, it would have felt very similar, if not identical, the nerves. So what's going to happen tomorrow, I said, is you're going to go out there, you're going to feel those nerves. And what's going to happen is your subconscious is going to go, whoa, 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 this is not good. Even though, it could be 99 out of 100. And then your subconscious would remember the one. And so, but if you know your subconscious is going to come with that, or the trickster is going to say, hey, whoa, whoa, be careful, be careful. You know it's going to feel the same, and you know it's going to remind you, you're going to be ready for it. And then, of course, like I shared earlier, if you're ready to face any feeling and your overall goal is just to learn and grow, it's win-win.
Would you recommend, this might be a very obvious question, so apologies if it's too straightforward, would you recommend in that scenario anchoring in the 95 then and trying to silence the 5? Or is it a case of transcending that so that you're fully present, knowing that the feelings that come up are the feelings that are going to come up regardless of outcome?
Okay, now, Brian, we're getting into neural training. There's this modality called neuro-linguistic programming. If you've ever heard of Tony Robbins, that's how he got his start and studied the subconscious mind. Yeah, so when I work one-on-one with a client, we're going to go in and rewire any failures or phobias, fears, negative experiences. And that can be done within a few hours. Usually it's like 2 or 3 hours, I do it with trauma too, which is unique for my role. I help people overcome trauma. So the way I explain inner excellence, that's different than sports psychology. I use a lot of sports psychology, obviously, because I work with a lot of pro athletes. What's different, I say, is 2 things. One, the focus is on the heart, the deepest part of you. We use the mind to train your heart and subconscious, so it's got a little more depth than sports psychology. And also, I help people overcome trauma. And when I say trauma, I mean serious trauma, like abuse or eating disorders or whatever. I've worked with many different kinds of traumas. And so the way we do it is we go in and find out how you don't want to feel. And I would do this with every client, every full-time client. My life's a little different now, less full-time clients. I do more retreats now. But if I have someone that I'm going to work with as a full-time client, then I'm going to ask you how you don't want to feel. And you might say, I don't want to feel anxious, stressed, afraid, and lost. Say that's kind of how you don't want to feel. I'll say, okay, well, when's the last time you felt anxious, afraid, stressed, and lost? And you're like, oh, okay, 2 weeks ago. And then I say, where do you feel that in your body? And we're going to go through your whole life and look for the worst feelings associated with that, all the way till you're a little kid. And then we're going to find them, and you're going to rate them out of 10, so I can know exactly we're talking the same language. So 10 is the worst feeling. So if you get a 10 out of 10, you're about to cry, or it's really painful. Just re-experience it, because I'm going to say, step into your shoes again when you were 10 years old. How does it feel? And I don't have to know any of the details. So it's you need courage to do it, but you don't need that much courage. And then we're going to rewire that memory, so the feeling, the emotion, the pain is gone. And that's what we do with everyone. And I wrote about that a little bit in the book as well. You can do it on your own.
What do you say to people who are afraid to do that deep inner work, whether it is somatic work, like you mentioned there, where you're feeding into your body, where your body's keeping the score, reliving the experience potentially as an inner child and moving through it so that you're coming from a different fuel source in that love, gratitude, etc. What do you say to those who are like, I don't want to lose my edge? Because this was my language for quite a large period of time. I was very resistant to therapy. I was very resistant to plant medicines. I was very resistant to doing the deep work because I thought it would make me lose my edge. The irony was I perform now, do better than I probably ever have, but I'm running from a different fuel source. What do you recommend for those who are like, that all sounds great, Brian, that sounds great, Jim, but I don't want to lose my edge, i.e. in the career, in the fitness, in the sports goal? What's your comeback, or how do you answer people? Because I'm sure this comes up in your space quite a lot. I would have been one of those a decade ago, so I'm curious to how you work through that objection.
Well, so if you're coming to me for performance, it doesn't matter if you're a business person or musician or artist or a pro athlete or an Olympic athlete, we're going to start there. I'm going to ask you how you want to feel. In other words, when you're at your best, how do you feel? And then I'm going to help you design your life meaning habits of thought and action, and how to get that feeling more often, or how to get into that zone, or as I write in the book, the flow of resonance, where you're fully engaged, heart, mind, and body, unattached to what you want, so you can be your best, unattached to your results, so you're not thrown off emotionally every time something doesn't go your way. So we're going to design that. So that's where we start, and help you understand how the mind works, how fear works, what your heart deeply wants, and what your heart deeply wants. We're going to get there when you're ready. But I know that when I was a pro athlete, I was like, I don't care about love, wisdom, courage. I just want to be the best pro baseball player, NFL star in the world. And so I totally get it. I mean, that was my obsession. And so that's where we start. And then what's going to happen if we work together long enough, or if you do a retreat, you're going to start to see, okay, yeah, I do want to be the NFL's best wide receiver. But that's because what I want is to have great experiences. I want to feel fully alive. And then you're like, start to see, okay, so if I want to feel fully alive, let's go for that every single day. And that's going to make you a better NFL prospect or player, football player, and you're going to have more joy and freedom. And so that's why Inner Excellence has been so successful, is because we go for developing inner peace, inner strength, and mental toughness. With that, we learn how to have joy and get you what you want most.
It's such an important message, because I know you speak in the book about those short-term wins, the status symbols, the surface success, and how it can't deliver lasting fulfillment. And I can speak firsthand from that you think, I'll be happy when fallacy. I'll be happy when I get bigger, when I get more money, when I get the attractive spouse, when I get the NFL title or a CrossFit title or ultramarathon ring or whatever it is. And sometimes that happens where you're proud of yourself and you become a new person. Your identity, to bring it back to what we talked about earlier, gets reinforced to someone that backs themselves more and has the confidence in themselves, has the focus to hit a goal that they set. That can be really beneficial, but sometimes it's coming at the cost of your inner peace. It's coming at the cost of relationships. It's coming at the cost of, your spirituality. And I just have one final question I want to ask around that. But before I do, I'm going to link the book in the description for people. Highly recommend they check it out, because it's coming at this from a holistic standpoint. And as somebody that would fall into the bracket of too focused on the outcome, too focused on the goal, and burning everything alongside me to try and hit it, if you're similar to me, you're going to get a tremendous value in this. So I'm going to link it out. I'll also link out all the social medias. I'll link out the innerexcellence.com website for the retreats. And I know Instagram, you're pretty active on now at the minute, Jim. Is there anywhere else you'd like to send people before I get into the final question?
Yeah, well, I have a newsletter that you can follow everything that I'm doing at innerexcellence.com. Just sign up for the VIP newsletter. Amazing.
Jim, the last question I want to ask, which rounds us off and ties us back to the start and the beginning, because we opened with spirituality and speaking about the why and finding a deeper why. This has been something that's been more front of mind and in my space in the last few years. As I get older, I'm going to be 38 at the end of the year, coming into my 40s. You're fueled differently to when you're in your 20s. You're completely different to when you're in your teens. And something that's been in my space quite a lot is connecting to a deeper why spiritually, moving out of my way when it comes to ego, and then things kind of happening for me as opposed to happening to me. And that's going to sound very esoteric and woo, but people that drop into that flow state regularly, where you've got your talents, you've got your gifts, you've got your calling, and you're following that, and then you're in alignment, life tends to feel a lot easier because you're not forcing things. What role does spirituality have in finding a why so that we can tap into that inner excellence?
So there's an energy that grows the grass, spins the earth, holds the stars in place. And that energy is available to connect to. And on a surface level, you can think of grounding, for example. How do you feel when you're in a concrete building all day versus how do you feel when you're in the woods all day? It's a very different energy. You get grounded and when you're in the woods. Well, there's this energy that I believe comes from the creator of the universe, but it doesn't matter what I believe. The important thing is to understand that there's this power that you can connect to. And it doesn't matter if you're an atheist or an agnostic, a Buddhist, or whatever you are. What I want every listener to do is to connect with this powerful energy. And I wrote a book about the spiritual life called The Best Possible Life, How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence. It's on Amazon now. You can. It's going to get re-released in March. It really comes down to everybody has faith. It doesn't matter if you're atheist or not. You have faith. You believe in something. And I think what's really key is to understand is what you love most is what's running your life. And I want to help people love most what's most empowering.
I love that. I think when it comes to that connection, and it's so interesting that you mentioned it, because like I'm not a religious person, but would consider myself quite a spiritual person. People have different belief systems, and that ranges all the way from a belief in source, universe, God, dharma, etc., all the way down to I believe I can or can't do this. And it's just a spectrum. And sometimes it's choosing what's the thing that's going to be most supportive to me. And again, focus group of one here, but understanding that there's this universal charge, frequency, energy that I can potentially tap into that's going to help me perform better in all the aspects of my life, that's really going to move it forward, is something that's very serving. And it might be a belief system for a few of the listeners, a couple of hundred, couple of thousand, maybe more, to potentially adopt going forward. Jim, very excited for our technically a little bit of a round two. We'll do the business chat on the circle in a moment. I'm going to link out the website for people, the Instagram page. They can check out the book. I highly recommend checking it out off the back of this podcast. But keep spreading your message, mate. And thank you so much again.
Thanks so much for having me.
That was today's guest, Unlocking Inner Excellence, Mental Toughness, the Heart's Role in Performance, and the Striver's Dilemma with Jim Murphy. Hopefully you got a lot from today's podcast, a lot of practical takeaway tips here. And today's episode was sponsored by The Circle, which is my online group business coaching. If you're a personal trainer, online coach working in the health and fitness industry and want to join a group of like-minded people, today's podcast was sponsored. And also there is a bonus episode in there where I'm speaking with Jim about dealing with nerves and bringing joy to your work. So all those premium episodes are available in The Circle as part of your membership. So the link is in the description below. That's everything from me from today's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Catch you next Monday.